All right, foreign policy. Let's talk about that first. Get my watch off. And we were here till 8:25, right?
Yeah, 9:25.
Oh, not 8:25. 9:25. 8:25 sounds good. All right. Foreign policy. I just have 2 points here. The first is a biblical perspective, thinking about this as Christians and Bible principles about foreign policy. And then the second part, depending on how much you guys want to discuss it, might take a little bit of time, but just I want to talk through a couple of current issues and think about, in light of the biblical ideas we look at, what the Bible's teaching. All right, biblical perspective. Just 2 points here. The first is this really goes back to the basic job of the government that we've already hit upon several times. Does anybody remember the basic job of the government? If you get nothing out of this class, you should be able to tell us what economics of the one lesson is. And hopefully this. I mean, if nothing else, you get this. Reward good and punish evil. We looked at Romans 13, 3 through 4, which says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power to do that which is good? And thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid." And it goes on. And then 1 Peter 2, 13 and 14. "Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of them that do well." All right, so we have that basic 2 things. Punish evildoers, praise of them that do well. We have already, maybe remember or recall, we talked about war and how part of the government's job is to prevent people from outside the country from coming in and killing us. Right? That would be protecting us from evil. It is not just evil from within the country. We can think of law enforcement, at least I do typically. The first thing I think about is law enforcement. I'm going to read that. But also apply it to other countries coming and killing us. That would also, at least I think it's kind of evil when somebody from outside the country wants to come and kill me. If you don't think that's evil, vote for Hillary, I guess, right? But it boils down to that. The government's job, even as we talk about how we relate to foreign countries, boils down to it's here to protect us from evil and to do good for us. Right? So I have that. That's the first point. Boils down to the same basic job. And then I have three main thoughts to think about as we apply directly to foreign policy that come out of these basic concepts. So 3 particular things that relate to foreign policy. First of all, rulers are to protect those that they are in charge of. Right? They are to protect them. We'd see that with the ministers of God, to a revenger to execute wrath upon them that do evil. So their job is to help protect those that they rule over. Okay, that would apply to World War II when we get bombed by the Japanese to protect us from further attacks by the Japanese. It would apply to, some crazy person high on medication coming to steal your stuff. It would also allow for the government to talk to other countries that might not like us. I mean, there are other options. If Iran says they hate us, the only option isn't, well, let's go blow them up. There are other options. So the government's job, even in here, as they talk to other nations, is to protect us from good. And that talking, basically, we call foreign policy. How are we going to? What kind of negotiations are we going to make with other countries? What kind of deals are we going to try to make with them? Something short of war. Can anybody think of how a war isn't always the best option? Just thinking about the people within the country. Why is it not always the best option to just go kill everybody that says they hate us? It costs money. It's something more important than money. Who's going to die? Us. Some of us are going to die in this war. Right? So as countries think about going to war, that is a factor. There might be some other country that hates us and they say they want to kill us, but to go after them means some of us are going to die. And at least as long as I'm not the one that's doing the dying, maybe it's not so bad. But, so there are other options, and that really is this foreign policy. They can talk to those countries, negotiate with them, and try to make sure that the people in their country are safe as they travel around the world. So rulers are there to protect the people they rule over, and that would include this negotiation. It doesn't always have to just be fighting. Negotiating, trying to make deals or treaties to fend off a war, or if there's a point of contention, going over to talk about it and try to remove the point of contention so there's not a fight. I know if you live in the dorm, negotiation is a foreign concept. Somebody puts their stuff on your bed, and the obvious answer is direct physical retaliation of some sort. And that's maybe the guy's girls' dorm too, I don't know. Girls' dorm was more like scratch and claw. No?
No, just nicely take it off. Or hit each other with blow dryers.
Wow. It's a scary picture. The girls' bathroom in the morning with hair, curling irons, blow dryer swinging. All right. Wow. Thank you very much for ruining my morning. Anyway, even in the dorm setting, there would be a point at which you might want to talk to somebody that did something you didn't like, not just direct physical retaliation. And it would apply here with other countries. There is a time where it's very appropriate and good to negotiate. All right? So, and the rulers in that negotiation, it's part of their protection of the people that they rule over. The ministers of God to thee for good and punishing the evildoers. All right? So that's the first. And rulers are there to protect those that they rule over, and that negotiation with other countries would be included in that, either side of that. All right, the second point, which I've kind of already implied, but I think it's worth emphasizing, rulers are out for the good of those they rule over. It says, minister of God to thee for good. All right, our rulers are out for our good, is the thought. Not necessarily the good of the children in some third world country. Not that we want them to starve to death. Or the good of people fleeing from another country. Not that we don't want to help them, but they're out for our good. So it is not wrong. It's not somehow evil or selfish for our leaders as they deal with other countries to make the first priority the good of their own country. All right? Often the phrase national security interest, that type of phraseology. But as they go out to negotiate or talk with other countries, they should be, the first thing in their mind should be the security of their country. All right. Too often, our leaders will say, "Well, we've got to have a fair and humane immigration policy," and the main concern is the people in other countries. And really, first priority should be the people that are here that are citizens. That's who they're out for the good for. So anyway, they're out for the good of those that they're rule over. It's not selfish, it's not evil, it's not wrong for them to go out and say, you know what, that's a bad deal. We're not going to make it because it hurts us. We don't have to come up with some other reason about, well, the children over here are damaged if we make that deal. No, it's bad for the people in my country. Right? So they're out for the good of the people in their country. And it is not wrong to make that the basis of decisions there. Okay. We America actually has been very timid to negotiate and do things for that reason. We have gone to war multiple times to protect people in other countries, but to just go out and negotiate or make a trade deal or end up going to war, we've been very hesitant to say this is because we want to be safe in America. And I think biblically, that's a very right answer. For the same reasons that if somebody invaded my house and I shot and killed them, I'm not going to say, well, this is for the children in my neighbor's house. I'm going to say, no, it's for my children. Right? It's for my stuff. All right, so it's for the good of their own people. All right, so in these trade negotiations, that's not somehow wrong or evil. We don't always have to go out there, only thinking about humanitarian aid and things like that. It's good for us. All right, and it's not somehow selfish. All right, then the third point, we have rulers are to protect those they rule over, and that would include negotiations and talking with other countries. That would be part of it. The second part is that they are out for the good of those they rule over. That's their primary concern. Okay, not that we can't think about other things possibly, but that's the primary concern. I once heard somebody say, wow, the war in Iraq, that was just over oil. And the answer was, well, what's wrong with that? Imagine if we had no oil. I mean, that would be very, very bad for our country. And it was not just over oil, but somehow we only went in there to help out America. Yeah, they attacked us. We were there to help ourselves out. And so that we somehow kind of cringe at that. But no, we were there to help us, to protect us. That's the heart of it. So, all right, the third point is that rulers need to actually be a terror. And you're thinking, they've succeeded. A terror, that's the one word used, a revenger to execute wrath, a punishment of evildoers, that type of thing. They actually have to have that terror. Imagine how ineffective our government would be if they had laws against theft and murder and all those types of things. But we had, for all of Porter County, one police officer. Would there be much terror from law enforcement? No, especially if you make, if you go the Barney Fife route with the police officer, that you had to always think of him, always, grabbing his one bullet out of his pocket. Can I load my gun now? All right. The police force in that case would not be a terror. It really couldn't do anything effectively to stop crime. Now, if we go to international things, what does that imply? If they aren't supposed to be this terror, what do we need to have as part of, I don't know how to say this, so I'll give them the answer. What would be the kind of the international parallel to a police force? Military. Yeah, I mean, this is, if our leaders just go out and say, you know what, you better not do that, or we're going to, I don't know, what do you do without military? We're going to say bad things about you on the internet. No, it needs to be, to be effective in its negotiations, you have to be able to back it up. All right, so it really this implies here a need for a legitimate military force. Now, we could argue about how big legitimate is, but it needs to be a terror. Just as if we would say our leaders were being negligent if they stripped away the entire police force, we'd say, wait a second, your basic job is to stop crime. In the same way, their basic job is to stop crime from other countries, them coming to kill us or take our stuff, which then means we do need to have a strong military. It's not just a conservative or Republican thing. We want a strong military. It's part of them doing their job, all right, to have a strong military. I know that I can't imagine Obama doing anything masculine. I can imagine his wife doing something masculine. Do you guys ever hear people talk about what a great athlete he is? I've seen, he's really good at basketball. And every clip I've ever seen, sorry girls, but he looks like a girl. It just shoots like a girl. It just, what's that?
He's an insult to a race.
I'll let you have him. If you're going to claim. But anyway, I know it goes against everything in his life to negotiate from a position of strength. When you go to another country and they know that you have a military force that can completely wipe them out, it does put you in a position of strength. And that's what we want. We don't want our civilian defense, the police force, to be in a position of weakness where there's the Latin kings from Chicago come to Porter County and the sheriff goes and says, please don't hurt anybody, and they just smack him around and kick him. We want the sheriff to, when they say no, to be all right, say guys, open fire, and there is no more Latin kings. We want them to have enough, maybe not literally that, but we want them to have enough meat, enough beef there to confront the enemy. And the same here with foreign powers. The rulers actually need to be able to be that terror. It can't just be a hollow threat. All right, that's pretty hollow. So rulers are there to protect the ones they rule over. They're out for the good of those that they rule over. The national interest of the country, that should be the dominant contention. And then a strong military, because they really need to be that terror. It can't just be these hollow threats. Insufficient, unsatisfying, too short, I don't know. Questions? Now, this might go crazy here, but I made a list of some issues, and I just have them listed. I really didn't write down anything deep about them or thoughts about them. But I want to try to think about what should be our approach to these in light of this. Okay, the first one I kind of already hinted at, but what about immigration and border security? what would be really a biblical approach to that? People talk about, oh, we want to be compassionate, and they're so poor in their own country and that type of thing. And there's a point to that. But what should be the primary concern of our immigration policy or the border security? Building the wall, as Trump says he's going to do. He also has advocated raising the minimum wage and other things. All of a sudden, now he's got the nomination locked up. So, what do you think? Immigration. Well, I already kind of answered it, but go ahead and somebody state it.
Protect our own interests as a country?
Yeah, it should be for our interests. It shouldn't be, the primary focus shouldn't be, well, these refugees, they don't have a home and they're living in the street. Yeah, I really feel bad for them. We can do something to help. But we don't have to let them in. Just like there are people that are homeless in America. That doesn't mean I have to let them live on my couch. Right? I can do other things to help them. All right? So the primary focus there is the security of our country. Right? And the same with border security. It is completely fair and right for us to completely control that border and let nobody through illegally, even if it requires building a wall like the Israelis built in Gaza. It would be completely right. Now, the Mexicans will go ballistic. The liberals will go ballistic. The Mexicans are extremely two-faced about this. The Mexican immigration policy is extremely rigid. Extremely rigid. I mean, they don't let people, I don't think that you can possibly go in and become a citizen. I mean, it's very tough. And if they catch you, they send you right back out. They're very strict with it. But somehow we're bad. So immigration, it would not be wrong to do those types of things because the primary goal is to protect the country. All right, let's go on to another one. Foreign aid. We give all kinds of money to other countries. A lot of things don't make sense, but I mean, we're $12 billion or $14 billion in a hole and climbing or sinking, whatever the right word is. And we're giving money away to other people. But I mean, we give money to all kinds of countries. It's very bad. Why is it bad? I hope that gets into the video so people know what we're referencing. Foreign aid. What should be the primary concern?
Our debt.
Our debt in our country. Yes. I mean, the people say, well, we give money to these countries to make them be our friends. A strong military is a very good way to have good friends. But really, we don't have to give them lots of money. But there are people, that's usually the argument, well, we're going to give this country lots of money, then they'll be friends with us and help us here. And, I could maybe at some point see some position where maybe that would be for our own interest. But not, we give money away to all kinds of people. And, and no, it's for our own interest. How about Muslim terrorism? Building to a climax. The Muslim terrorist part or the music? What's wrong with you? So. Okay, hopefully you're thinking now we need to kill them, we need to blow them up or something. Do we really need to be concerned primarily about that the Muslims in the Middle East understand us and know that we really don't hate them? No. I mean, our primary concern is to make sure they don't come here and blow us up. All right? So, but if you listen to liberals too often, and sometimes Republicans, they'll talk about, well, we've got to be nice to them. We want to we want to make sure they don't come here and blow us up. And if they're going to do that, then we want to go there and make sure we are a terror to their good works. All right? So Islamic fascism, whatever we want to call it there, we do need to call it Islamic militantism or extremism or something. But it's completely right and biblically right for us to attack and try to destroy it. We don't have to let thousands of Syrian refugees into the country. If it works out and it's not, we can do that and be safe, that's fine. But we do need to make sure that we don't let extremists come in with that group. Just like if there really was a homeless guy in Chesterton that needed some help, before I let him into my house and sleep on the couch, I'm going to make sure that he's not some deranged maniac. All right? That's first priority is my children and my wife not getting killed. high up there is me not getting killed as well. then underneath that is helping the guy out. Like maybe I'll just pay for a hotel room in town and not bring him to my house. So there are other ways if we want to be nice to people. But first priority is that. So when we talk about the Syrian refugees, that's been the current issue, or others like that. Liberals say, "Oh, you're not caring. These people don't have homes," and that's true. There's some of them that aren't. I heard of a Syrian refugee that ended up in our service. It was a doctor in Syria, fled the country with nothing, and he's here. I mean, so there's legitimate refugees, but there are also some very illegitimate refugees that are using this as a vehicle to try to get to America. And our first concern is to protect America, and that is not somehow selfish or wrong or bad to say, you know what, we like to help, but we're going to make sure we let the right people in. And so you're going to give us some time, not just we'll let you in and then we'll decide who's the bad guy or not. Perfectly fine. What about natural disaster relief around the country, or some sort of humanitarian crisis, and us giving money to that? Is it good to help people that are in need? Yeah. But as far as our government's concerned, what's the first priority? Us, the people in our country. That's the first priority. It is really irritating. You have to really dig sometimes. But usually it makes big news what the government does. But in most cases, private citizens give more than what the government does. So they act like, oh, if we didn't help, nothing would get done. And really, they're usually a small percentage of all the aid that goes. So it's not like there's not going to be help given. But their primary concern is the people within their own country. So, all right, what about the United Nations? Just get out of here. Yeah. It wouldn't be wrong for us to just say, you know what? The United Nations hates us. They think we're they're the I just forgot the name of the committee. The Human Rights Committee has listed America as one of the chief violators of human rights in the world. And it'd be perfectly fine for us to say, you know what? This isn't helping our country out at all. We're not members, and you can meet in Algeria or someplace. You don't have to meet in New York, right? Get out of here, all right? That'd be perfectly fine, perfectly right. So, all right, I think you see the point. I mean, the first concern is our country and what's good for our country. And just like we would talk domestically about the government really can't give out charity, it doesn't make any sense for a government to give out charity. They take your money by force and give it to her. I don't know where that becomes charity. Okay, that's theft, or and really internationally it becomes the same thing. The government takes your money and gives it to somebody in Africa. I mean, that's not charity. If you give your money to the person in Africa, that's charity. So anyway, even internationally, the same thing would apply. The government's job there isn't to be nice to those people. It's to make sure the people in our country are safe. So, foreign policy. Questions? Yeah.
Maybe it's a stupid question, but
I like those because they're easy to answer.
yeah. Is it hard for people coming over to become legal immigrants because tons of people come over illegally?
Once they get here,
what's the problem?
Once they get here, they have to go back and come back in to be legal. I mean, if you come in illegally.
Why don't they come in legally anyway? Do we only let a certain amount in?
Some of it is there's a process to go through, and it usually takes money, and getting a lawyer and getting the paperwork. Yeah, and sometimes it does take some time. So they just jet across the desert.
Therefore, they can't.
Oh, we're not talking about years and years, months, maybe a year at the longest, but there's some time usually. And there are some limits to the numbers we let in, which is perfectly fine.
So if they are poor, then they pretty much can't come in legally?
If they what, I'm sorry?
If they're poor, then they pretty much can't come in legally?
Not necessarily. In Mexico, no, you couldn't go there. You have to show a certain amount of wealth and that you can sustain yourself before they'll let you in. But we don't require that. So, but you're right. It does take some. You can't just walk up to the border and say, "I'm here to come legally." There's some work beforehand that has to take place. So, and there are people that have done that. I mean, a lot of people do that and come to the country legally. And it really is unfair to them to say, well, all these other people that just cheated, we're gonna turn our, we're not gonna do anything about it. So, anyway, we on the other hand, we have created this big mess where we just never enforced the borders. We've let it happen and let it happen. Be like, I don't know, if Mr. Schrock had a plate of cookies on the front desk in the dorm and never ever punished anybody for taking them. And he just kept putting more cookies out, and you guys kept eating them. He put more cookies out. You could say, oh, these wicked guys in the dorm, they keep eating the cookies. And you say, wait a second, he keeps putting them out there. What are we supposed to do with them? Right, and we have aggravated the problem by never dealing with it. And in the past, even under Reagan, there was an amnesty program where a lot of them were given an option to become legal without going through the process. So we've encouraged it, we've aggravated it, we've never enforced the rules. So we do have a big problem. But I would not be, yeah.
Why is it a problem if they come over illegally? What is
Illegally?
Yeah. Are they do they get on government welfare?
They can. We don't know who they are. I mean, terrorists can walk across the border. Lots of criminals from Mexico walk across the border. I mean, there's been rapes and murders and all kinds of things from illegals that have come in. Not that they're all evil and wicked, but we don't know. It'd be just like me saying, well, I'm going to open my doors and let anybody that wants to come and get food on my fridge. Some people come in and it'd be very nice and maybe leave a little tip on the counter with a thank you card. Others are going to take the fridge. And it would be perfectly within my rights to say, well, I'm going to give some food away, but I'm going to make sure I know who's coming. If they took the fridge right now, they might lose. It's in pretty bad shape. It'd almost be a blessing. I won't have to carry it out. So. Yes.
So would the wall be a good or a bad thing?
A what?
The wall that he would...
I think good. If not a wall, we need to control the border. I mean, that's something to control the border. I mean, I have a wall around my house. The president has a wall around the White House. You go and try to crawl over that wall sometime. And he doesn't, I would love to see him sometime get up. You know what, these walls are terrible. I'm going to start by taking one down at the White House. But he's not going to do that because he knows it keeps him safe. The same people that say we don't want civilians to have guns typically have multiple armed guards protecting them. That's a little hypocritical. So, a wall or more something to control the border. I mean, for the same reasons, if I kept waking up every morning and the food's gone out of the fridge, cash is gone, and just things get stolen every night, I'm going to ramp up the protections to keep my house safe. Start locking the doors, put bars in the window, laying out in the grass with a sniper rifle with night vision sights. I'm going to ramp it up to stop it for the property that I own and to protect my children. Always bring up the children. So does that make sense? So I mean, it is perfectly right for us to control that border for our safety, and it's not somehow selfish to say that. Really, the answer should be, yeah, the Mexicans really they are pretty bad. They should get rid of their government. What's wrong with their leaders? Just like we tell somebody that's a bum, maybe you should go get a job. They can fix their government. They don't have to come here.
What is the main deficiency in our guarding the border? Just
Undermanned. There's not adequate fencing. We have policies of catch and release if they're not flagrant criminals, and we catch them on this side of the border and turn them loose. There are all kinds of accounts of state police and agencies catching illegal aliens that have come across the border. They turn them over to the Immigration Customs Service, and they release them in our country, release them. Usually they'll say, well, we want you to come back in 90 days for a hearing, or something like that. But you know how that goes. Just release them. I mean, we don't enforce the rules. I mean, some states have tried to do that, and the Obama administration went after them legally, and I think it still might be in the courts, saying that they cannot enforce immigration laws. It's only the federal government that can do it. And the federal government saying, we're not going to do it. And several states said, well, we're going to. And they were going after them, prosecuting them, saying you can't. So, look like I got a question. Okay. So, how does that? There are sanctuary cities where cities have declared we will not report any illegals to the government. You come here, we won't. If you get arrested, whatever, we're never going to report it.
You just name yourself Mexico.
Yeah, and that's how we get Trump in California with people waving Mexican flags, protesting against him. I mean, it's so. Okay. Foreign policy. Anything else? Trump has lots of problems, but at least he's he's not afraid to say, you know what, we're going to control the border. It's for our safety. And for all that I don't like about him, I at least appreciate his very blunt. He's willing to just say something. You know what? We've got a problem. He's also willing to say we need to raise the minimum wage. So but that's complete insanity. And all of you, because of Hazlitt, instantly think of all the reasons why that's so stupid. And Donald Trump is not an idiot. Okay? So he knows why it's so stupid. So, well, maybe he's an idiot. I don't know. He's not an idiot. That is a purely political move. That's all it is. Purely political. He knows how stupid it is. Purely political. All right. Questions going once? Twice? California Democratic Party versus Jones? All right, let's review what we've got going on here. For those of you that weren't here last class period, we're just going to talk about this first one today, and we'll do the other, I think, 3 of them next class period. Your job is to, in theory, right, Christina? Read through these. I put down there the key parts of the constitutional laws that we need to look at. You're welcome to look at the rest of the Constitution and other things. I don't want you to just look and see how the court ruled on this. I want you to try to read it, think about what we know about the Constitution, and try to figure out what would be the right answer, what would be the right ruling on this. So, did anyone stumble across the ruling for this California Democratic Party versus Jones? And I am assuming that people actually looked into it, but maybe a false assumption. All right, let me read down through the facts of the case, and then we'll get to the questions. And then here I would hopefully get some of you to ask questions, or at least discuss a little bit before I tell you how the court ruled. All right, in California, candidates for public office can gain access to the general ballot by winning a qualified political party's primary. In 96, the voters approved Proposition 1 at 98. California has a system where lots of laws get put on the ballot and people vote for them as opposed to the legislature passing them. It changed California's partisan primary, that's always makes it sound bad, from a closed primary in which only political parties' members can vote on its nominees to a blanket primary in which each voter's ballot lists every candidate regardless of party affiliation and allows the voter to choose freely among them. So that's before 96, you'd go to the polling place. You would have to be a Republican, you get a Republican or whatever party, you get their ballot, and it only had the Republican candidates on it. Right? It was switched to where you go in the primary to vote, and they give you a ballot, and it's got all the Republican candidates, all the Democratic candidates, the Libertarian candidates, Green Party, whatever, all of them listed. Nothing about parties or anything, just all their names listed. And you get to vote out of that list. And the Republican that got the most votes became the Republican Party nominee, and the Democrat that got the most votes became the Democratic Party nominee. Does everyone understand the change there? All right, let's go on. The California Democratic Party, the Republican Party, Libertarian Party, Peace and Freedom Party have historically prohibited non-members from voting in the party's primary. Now think about that. Is that a reasonable thing, that they don't let non-members vote? I mean, do we let non-members vote in our church? These are private entities. So. All right, each political party filed suits against Bill Jones, the Secretary of State of California, alleging that the blanket primary violated the First Amendment right of association. Jones countered that a blanket primary will intensify the election and allow for better representation in elected office. Siding with Jones, the district court held that the primary's burden on the party's association rights was not severe and was justified by substantial state interests. The Court of Appeals affirmed. So the lower courts said the law was fine. There was no violation of the Constitution to have this blanket primary. the initial court, the first trial court, the appeals court, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and that's the decision I'll tell you in a second. What do you think? There's actually a couple of things to think about here, but
I didn't really understand who was changing but what you had put down for the Constitution is that the Congress or whatever couldn't interfere with the election of that thing.
okay. It was California itself changing this.
Yeah, so
It was not Congress changing it. So that's,
then they were allowed to, according to the Constitution?
well, that's the question.
It's not Congress changing the law, so if Congress isn't changing it, then they can change it. It's the state changing it, right?
Uh-huh.
So the state can change it because it doesn't say the state can't.
I,
It says Congress can't, right? I don't
You're
know.
one of those simpletons that actually reads the Constitution. Okay. Anything else? You're not one of those simpletons, but it's very good to read the Constitution. She got it all right there? Okay. I think you're right. It's just Congress can't make a law. And they're arguing that the California changing law violated the First Amendment. Now, the district court didn't rule that. They didn't just say that. Well, it's just Congress. They didn't say that. The First Amendment prior to this, the courts had ruled, applied to the states. Now, again, if you say, oh, yeah, I see states there. The courts had previously ruled that based upon the 14th Amendment, really just a bunch of smoke and mirrors, very, very loose reasoning. They applied it to the states. It was incorporated to the states is the phrase. So when the courts read this amendment and were dealing with this, they really were essentially reading it, states can't do these things as well. So the lower courts, they didn't argue so much that this change was done by the states, therefore the First Amendment didn't apply. They argued that when they looked at the interest of the states and the interest of the people to associate freely, the free association was not, what do they say, was not severely burdened, therefore this law was justified. So they conceded the point. I mean, they didn't even argue about the point that you brought up, which I think is probably, should be, a larger argument. Wait a second, it says Congress. So, okay, other questions before I... All right, the court actually ruled 7-2 against the law in this case. But they didn't go to what you said. They argued that it was too much of a burden on the free association of these parties. Right? They didn't go to the obvious, it says Congress. Right? Antonin Scalia actually wrote the opinion for this one, arguing that it was a violation of, I agree, throwing out the Constitution, a blanket primary is just insane. It'd be like we're voting to find out who our next pastor is going to be, and we just send out a ballot to everybody in the state, and we have on there women and men. We have atheists on there, and you go ahead and pick. It's like, wait a second, this makes no sense. We're talking about the pastor of this church, but that's how they were wanting them to choose their political candidates. Really, a very unfair, crazy system. All right, but by the Constitution, there is no violation because it says Congress. So, no, I do agree that it was bad, but constitutionally speaking, it's a state issue. Okay. Now, there is, we're not going to read the parts of it, but Congress does have the leeway to meddle, not meddle's not the right word, to alter these laws. So Congress could pass a law saying, that's very, very unfair. Let's undo it. But as far as the Constitution and the First Amendment, they're not Congress. So, questions on that before Christina falls asleep? Anybody look ahead at the others? Okay. The next one involves the Miranda rights. And what's the next one? I forget. Reynolds versus Sims, state legislatures. Okay, Dole. That one goes back to the 60s and 66. But then we have a 2005 decision. during your lifespan. Okay, that was not that old. Dealing with eminent domain. So, okay, next class period we will run through those and talk about the final. Next class period. You're dismissed.